In a cave in southern China, archaeologists dug up a scatter of broken clay fragments. Thin, curved, blackened on one face. Fitted back together, they make a simple round pot. It is 20,000 years old. Older than farming, older than the end of the Ice Age, and it is the oldest cooking pot anyone has ever found. Most people file pottery under crafts, something you do at a weekend workshop, but firing clay is one of the very few chemical reactions ancient people learned to control. It runs one way, it never runs back, and it is the reason we got metal. This is how. Start with the material, because clay is stranger than it looks. Clay is not dirt. It is a mineral, ground down by water over an unbelievable length of time, until what is left is microscopic flat plates, stacked like a deck of wet cards. And between those plates sits water. That water is the whole trick. It lets the plates slide across each other without coming apart. That is why clay is slippery. That is why it holds a shape when you push it. Wet clay is a solid that flows and then stays where you put it. You can shape it with bare hands. No tools, no skill. So people shaped it and left it in the sun. The water leaves, the pot goes pale and hard, and it feels finished. It is not, because only the water between the plates has gone. The plates themselves are untouched. The mineral is exactly what it was. Put that pot in a stream and it softens. Fill it with water and the bottom turns to mud. Leave it in the rain and it slumps back into a lump. A sun-dried pot is a pot you cannot trust. To go further, you have to break the mineral itself. Which brings us to fire. Push clay past about 600 degrees and something completely different happens. There is a second kind of water in there, not sitting between the plates. Locked inside the crystal structure, chemically bonded, part of the mineral itself. Heat drives it out, and when it goes, the structure collapses and reforms into something new. The plates can no longer slide. They can never take that water back. It is not clay anymore. It is ceramic. And here is the important part. That reaction does not run backwards. Leave that pot in a river for 1,000 years. It will not soften. Nothing in the material remembers being clay. There is no way back. And it keeps getting better. Past about 900 degrees, the particles begin to fuse where they touch. Not melting, just welding at the contact points. So a mass of separate grains becomes one continuous solid. That is called sintering, and it is where the strength comes from. Higher still, and some of the minerals melt into glass. That glass runs into the gaps between the grains and fills them. And the pot is genuinely waterproof. Not sealed, not coated. Waterproof through the whole wall. Every step up in temperature buys you a better pot. So the recipe is simple. Get it hot. Get it hotter. The trouble is getting there, because an open fire is a terrible furnace. Pile wood over your pots and light it, and the heat goes straight up into the sky. The side facing the flames roasts. The side facing away stays cool. Hundreds of degrees difference across a single pot, and a pot that heats unevenly cracks, because one part is expanding while the other is not. Come back in the morning and some pots are hard, some are soft and crumbling, and some are in pieces. An open bonfire tops out somewhere around 800 degrees, sometimes less, rarely for long. It is enough to make a pot. It is not enough to make a good one. So the real invention here is not the pot. It is the kiln. Fired clay kilns show up around 9,000 years ago, and the design is deliberate. A kiln is a chamber, and it does three things an open fire cannot. First, it separates the fuel from the pots. The fire burns in its own space, below or beside, and only hot gas passes over the ware. Nothing is scorched on one side and raw on the other. Second, it traps the heat. Walls of clay and stone hold the temperature in, instead of losing it to the night air. The whole chamber comes up together and stays there. Third, and this is the clever one, it controls the air. A hole at the bottom, a hole at the top, and hot gas rising in between. That creates a draft that pulls fresh air through the fire. More air is more oxygen. More oxygen is a hotter flame. You are not building a fire anymore. You are building a machine that makes fire hotter than it wants to be. With a chamber and a good draft, a potter can hold 1,000 degrees, and hold it for hours. Now the pots come out the same every single time. Hard, ringing, waterproof, repeatable. That last word is the one that matters. Repeatable means you can make 100, and 100 changes everything. Because a waterproof vessel that survives fire means you can boil. And boiling is not just a nicer way to cook. Roasting works on things that are already edible. Boiling works on things that are not. Hard grain, dry seeds, tough roots. All of them are basically stones until you can simmer them in water for an hour. Bones give up their fat and marrow only in a long boil. Shellfish open. Tough old meat goes soft, and nothing escapes. When you roast, the fat drips into the fire and it is gone. When you boil, the fat floats on the surface and you drink it. We can prove people did this. Some of the oldest pots in Japan still have burnt residue inside them. Analyzed, it comes back as fish. The first pots were cooking pots. In a hard winter, that is not a preference. That is the difference between food and no food. Then there is storage. Grain in a basket is grain shared with mice, damp, and mold. Grain in a big fired jar with a lid is dry, sealed, and out of reach. And now a good harvest is not just a good month. It is a surplus that lasts until the next one, which is the quiet precondition for everything else. You cannot store a year of food if you are carrying it. Storage rewards staying put. Staying put lets you plant. The village, the granary, and the pot all arrive together. And it is genuinely hard to say which one caused the others. They came as a set. Vessels also unlock time. Fermentation needs somewhere to hold a liquid, undisturbed, for weeks. Beer, wine, yogurt, fish sauce, pickles in brine. All of it needs a jar that does not leak and does not rot. Some of the oldest chemistry we have is beer and wine residue, scraped out of pottery. The pot did not just hold food, it changed it. And then the jar went traveling. Seal a liquid inside ceramic and it becomes something you can trade. Olive oil, wine, fish sauce. All of it crossed the Mediterranean inside standardized clay jars. Amphorae. Stack them in a ship's hold and they lock together. Stamp the handle and you have the maker, the place, and the year. The pot is now a container, a unit of measure, and a receipt. Whole economies ran on it. Millions of them were made. Most of them broke, and that turns out to be extremely useful. Because pottery does one more thing, entirely by accident. It is almost impossible to destroy. Metal corrodes, wood rots, cloth vanishes, bone dissolves in the wrong soil. But a broken piece of fired pottery is chemically finished. It has already had its reaction. It just sits there. So the ground under every old settlement is full of them. Dig anywhere in the old world and you will hit pottery before you hit anything else. And potters were always changing things. The shape of a rim, the pattern on a shoulder, the color of the surface. Styles shift every few decades, which means a fragment of a broken pot is a date. Archaeologists read almost the entire ancient world off it. The invention that stored the food became the clock. But the biggest thing the kiln gave us was not a pot at all. Think about what a potter has actually learned. How to build a chamber that survives extreme heat. How to choose fuel. How to control a draft. How to reach a temperature and hold it there for hours. How to read the color of the glow and know how hot it is inside. That is not a pottery skill list. That is smelting. Copper does not come out of rock at campfire temperature. You need a sealed hot chamber with forced air. Exactly the thing the potter already built. Aura in the fire instead of clay. And that may be exactly how it happened, because copper minerals make bright green pigment, and pigment goes into the kiln. Smelting is not really a new technology. It is the kiln pointed at a different material. The pot came first. The Bronze Age is standing on a potter's fire.